Well, good morning. Good. Making sure we're still awake with the fair and everything. Well, hey, I know what you're probably thinking right now. Man, Nathan got a whole lot more handsome. He's got a toupee on or something. But hey, no, relax. It's just me. If I haven't got to meet you yet, my name is Parker. I'm the student pastor here. And over the last 10 weeks, we have been going over this series called The Big Ten. And we are going all the way back to the original 10 commandments that God gave us in Exodus 20. And so Nathan and I were talking, and he gave me the honor. And he was like, hey, man, I would love if you would do one of these. And I was like, dude, love to, but not the adultery or murder. You got that? And he was like, I got it. I was like, good. Just didn't want to deal with that. All right, great. Did the hard ones. And so he asked me to close it out with commandment number 10. And so that's where we're going to be today. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to be grounded in Exodus 20, verse 17. So let me read it for you. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. You shall not covet. Shall not covet. Over the last few weeks for me, life has been awesome. It's been crazy. We had middle school camp. We had high school camp. And they have been a blast, right? I have been seeing life change, baptism. It's awesome. But at these camps, all right, it takes a lot of active, just being active, and a lot of competitive moments happen. So at high school camp, there's this basketball court. It's outdoor, and I see my high school boys. A lot of them played for Danville High School, and some just travel, and I'm like, okay. So some of you don't know this, but I consider myself a baller. We'll see what happens. And so I see them, and I'm like, okay, here's what I want to happen. I want them to see me and be like, Parker, come over here. And I'll be like, okay, and walk over. And they see me, and after we play, they're like, wow, I am so grateful he's at Northview because he could be on a 10-day contract with the Pacers right now, but he chose to be here with me. That's what I want them to think. Okay? And now, let me just get this out of the way as well. The court, it's right next to the ocean. It's super windy, okay? The backboard's super slick. It's triple rimmed. You know, I'm on these open-toed Jesus slides I'm wearing. It's camp. So the odds were against me. And so I'm like, I'm going to make them see I'm a baller. But I'm out there. Air ball, a few more air balls. And I'm just like, it's the win. And there's a high schooler, I'll name drop him. He might be in here. Zach Waits was like, you're good. And I'm like, I know I'm good. And I was like, this is just awful. And I was embarrassed. And, I had my students thinking, Parker wishes he was a little bit taller, wishes he was a baller. But I wasn't all that. And I'll be honest, there was moments where I'm watching everyone moving, and I feel like I'm moving in slow motion. It's the weirdest thing. At first, I'm like, all right, so we got a juicing problem in our student ministry. Everyone's jumping and running really fast, so I'm really confused what's going on. But then I realized, well, old Parker got married about a year ago, and he's got a little bit of marriage weight on him, a little out of shape, and he's just moving slow, and it was hard. And I'll be honest, in that moment, I was a little bit like, ugh. Like, I wish I was moving like I used to. I wish I could show them. I wish I was doing that. And even in the most silly moments where I didn't show it on my face, I was just like, oh, that stinks. I still had that moment of, I wish I was like that. And this week, as I was praying for God to show me what is coveting really entice, what does that mean? What does that have to do with us today? I thought of that moment, where it's such a silly, just fun, messing around moment, and yet there was a thought that I had of, man, I wish I was like that. It made me realize that even in the most unserious, the most fun moments, that coveting, that envy, that jealousy can sneak up and control your thoughts. And so today, we're going to talk about that. So again, let me read the verse for you guys. Verse 17, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, shall not covet your neighbor's wife, his male or female servant, his ox or donkey. You shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. Now, we're going to be talking about this coveting the whole time. And something that's important for me to do is when I hear coveting, first thought is like, what's that mean again? Okay, that's what that means. Because the coveted, we just don't really say that word around anymore. I have not really been around fields and heard someone been like, what'd you get? Oh, I'm coveting over that, man. I should have had that. I just don't hear that much. And so let's talk about what coveting is. So simply, coveting is to desire someone's possessions more than what you already have. So coveting includes jealousy and envy, but it's so much more than just the thought of, man, I wish I had that. Man, I wish I drove that. It's more than that. And in fact, the Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew. So Exodus was written in Hebrew. And the Hebrew word for covet is this word called kamad. Everyone say kamad. A bunch of Hebrews out there. You guys are awesome. It's kamad, and that translates English to desire to take pleasure in. Okay? To desire to take pleasure in. And I kept researching this kamad word, and in that culture, in ancient Near East culture, coveting, what that really translated to is a phrase called to lift the eyes. To lift the eyes. And when I hear that, I think of my number one form of coveting. It's called the, oh, I should have ordered that look. You're at a restaurant, you order something you feel confident on, maybe your partner or a friend orders something, you get the food, and you go, oh, what was that? I should order that. And the whole meal, this is good, but that probably is way better. Can I try to buy that? Oh, I should have ordered that. And it's that to lift the eyes at someone else's plate, to look and to desire what they had. That's my thing. All right, I always fold under pressure when at those restaurants, and to lift your eyes is so much more than just a restaurant and ordering something. That I should have ordered that moment happens in all stages of life for us. Happens in all stages of life. Let me give you some examples. You just bought a house, 2 beds, 2.5 baths, great backyard. Gosh, we're so blessed. God, thank you, so blessed. Well, a few weeks later, you get invited over to old Tommy's house. Tommy's got 3 bedrooms. Tommy's got an extra half bath. Tommy's got a pool in his backyard. And all of a sudden, you start thinking, wow, I don't have this. My house is starting to feel really crammed. Man, I wish I had that. Am I poor? What is going on? I was happy with this, but man, I actually want to try to save up and get something even better than that. And it starts to just destroy from the fact of what God has provided for you in your home, the home that you made, the home that He gave you. And it starts to point you to what home you don't have or what home you think you need. Maybe it's a car where you have old reliable, maybe a Nissan or something where you're driving and it's got, miles on it, but man, she has been there for all the kids and everything. And it needs an oil change more than a normal car, but it's a good car. And you love the car, and then your coworker pulls up and they got a new Mercedes, and you're like, hold on. We have the same job. How are you getting a Mercedes and I have this rinky-dink Nissan? And you start to think, man, I'm saving up money for my kid or for this, but now I feel like I need to go spend that money for a brand new car because my coworker has a brand new car. And honestly, I feel like that I'm just embarrassed by the car I drive. It's just kind of, my worth is in my car. That if I have that car, then I'm kind of just worthless. And all you do is think about that. Let's get even more serious. You have a spouse, a husband or a wife, and they check off 7 or 8 out of the 10 boxes that you need, which is fantastic. I've been married for a year, and that's amazing if that's the case. But that's supposed to be a good thing, not like a uh-oh. No, that's supposed to be a good thing. That's a good thing, I promise. Here we go. I love you, Emma. Here we go. But you're with this couple, and you start to notice, oh man, that spouse, they fill out the other 2 boxes that I needed. Man, that person, they do stuff that I've been thinking I needed. Or maybe it's just you don't know anybody's life or relationships, but you see that and you're like, man, I wish my spouse did that. And what does that do? That just destroys your marriage. maybe turning to porn or even worse, adultery, and just getting worse and worse. Or it destroys your marriage. You see, coveting to lift the eyes pulls you from what you have now, what God has given you, and tries to tell you what you need and what more do you need. We all struggle. We all struggle with coveting, jealousy, envy. And if we do not see that in commandment number 10, God clearly says, do not covet, that we know right from the bat that, okay, that probably means don't covet because God knows what's good for our life. But also it shows us that we crave a fulfilled life, and coveting is trying to fulfill that with other things that won't fill it. And so if you continue to covet, if you continue to be jealous and envy in everything you do, it will fester into some products that are completely destructible, that will destroy relationships, lives, plans. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about 3 products that coveting will produce if left untreated. And here is my challenge for you guys. I want you guys, when we talk about this, to hear it, truly examine your hearts of saying, is that me right now? Is that what I'm going through? Examine your relationships, because if it is, let's change it. But it's a warning for all of us, of what coveting will do if we don't acknowledge it, if we don't treat it. So coveting produces, the first one is this: coveting produces division. Coveting produces division. Does your life feel divided? Maybe it's with friends, coworkers, family, parents, spouse. Maybe it's a loss of friends or relationships because this person has what you don't have, and that actually kind of frustrates you. And since that frustrates you, you're going to be kind of snippy with them. You're going to have a little bit of hate in your heart for them. Maybe it's that relationship that you see their highlight reel on Instagram and Facebook is everyone smiling. You can barely get 2 of your kids to smile out of 10 pictures once. And you start to think, oh man, maybe I need to do what they're doing, and maybe my relationship is actually not great. You know what? It's my spouse's fault. It's this person's fault. It's this kid's fault. And you know what that does? That just divides your family. That just divides your family because you think you need what that person has, what this person have, and you're completely missing the point of what God has given you, the type of gifts and unique qualities that each person owns. And if you go back to the original, do not covet, it says this. I'm going to put it on screen again. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, shall not covet your neighbor's wife, their male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Something that fascinates me, maybe I'm just a nerd, yes I am, is how all the commandments are very straightforward of like, you shall not commit adultery, do not commit murder. It's like, okay. But this one is like 2 or 3 sentences of like, don't do this, don't covet over this, don't covet over that, don't covet over this, don't covet over that. And you're like, man, he could have just said, don't covet. But he lists everything. Why does God do that? Well, I believe God does that to show how coveting can happen in every single aspect of your life. Every single aspect, that coveting, that envy, that jealousy can take over and really divide your life, divide your household, maybe divide you from God if not treated. Maybe that's the marriage that you think is perfect and it's dividing because you see this and you see that and you think they don't have this, they don't have that. Maybe, and let me be honest here, because this happens from birth all the way to the end of the age with parents and their kids. I see it a lot, really sad, in Northview students. And that is when it is a parent that sees their kid. And they see another kid that is not their own. And they see that kid has won the 4-H farm show. They got first. Yeah, don't laugh. It's my first time. They see they get first. They see that kid starts on the basketball team, but you're sitting on the bench. Their kid's sitting on the bench. They see this kid made the team and their kid didn't make the team. They see this kid got honor roll, but their kid isn't. They see later on that your kid still is in the same job, but that other person's kid just got a promotion. They're making that amount of money. And you start playing the evil comparison game and dividing your household, dividing the relationship between a parent and a child, and that is just awful. When you realize that God created your child uniquely, He gifted your child with all their unique gifts and talents, and they're not like anybody else, and that's great. That's amazing. And instead of wanting this and wanting that, no, God lists out how don't covet in every situation of your life because it's really easy to. Coveting produces division. Next one is this. Coveting produces unsatisfaction. Coveting produces dissatisfaction, unsatisfaction, you name it. Coveting is an evil thing that tells you want this, and you need that, and you need that, you need more of this, you need more of that. And you can't satisfy it with those things. One of the craziest things, again, nerd moment for me, is that in the Bible, Genesis 1 through 3 is about the creation of the earth, the creation of heavens, the creation of man, animals, and then we see the fall of man in Genesis 3. We see the fall of man. We see brokenness, evil, and sin enter the world when Adam and Eve disobeyed God and ate from the tree. So when brokenness and sin entered the world, you guys want to know what the first ever story, the first ever historical account according to the Bible, you know what the first story that follows it right after sin enters the world? It's the story in Genesis 4 of Cain and Abel. Quite literally the poster boy story for coveting. If you don't know Cain and Abel, I'll give you a quick synopsis. Cain and Abel, created by God. God gave Cain and Abel shares of land and to tend to and animals. And he says, all right, bring me the offering. Cain and Abel bring their offering. God looks at Abel's offering, and he's like, that's good. He looks at it with favor. But God looks at Cain's, and he's like, that's not really cutting it, man. That's not good. Cain sees this. He sees God loving his brother's offering and not his own. And Cain gets overwhelmed with envy, overtaken with jealousy and covet. So what does he do? He takes his brother out to the field and murders him. Out of pure coveting. Murders him. It's a very intense story, but I think it shows just how easy it is for us to covet. Because right when sin enters the world, the first thing we see is that. Cain and Abel, coveting, of wanting what someone has that they don't have. It's the, I wish I had this, I wish I had that mindset. I wish I had more of this. I wish I had more of that. I need this. I need this. Later I'll get this. I'll get the new thing of this. I need more. And it's so tiring. When does it stop? It doesn't stop when you think like that. It doesn't stop. It's so tiring, and you stop giving thanks. You stop thinking about what God has given you. You stop thinking about how amazing your kids are, how amazing your spouse is, and how lucky and blessed you are. How amazing of a job you have. Or maybe you're in a hard situation, like a diagnosis, or you're waiting for one, or you're unemployed right now, and you're like, this is not a moment where I am feeling at all thankful. And so then you start to covet what other people have and you don't right now. And that is so dangerous when you don't have the baseline of what God has already done for you anyways. And we're going to continue to talk about that. And so coveting produces unsatisfaction. The last one is this. Coveting produces slavery to unreachable desires. That is intense language, and it is purposeful. Coveting produces slavery to unreachable desires. What coveting does is not only keep you unsatisfied, it keeps you wanting more and more and more. And eventually, it keeps you wanting more to something that doesn't exist. For most of us, that thing that doesn't exist is perfection. what coveting does is it tells you, man, if this, I see that person has that, and so when I look like this, when I finally look like that, then it'll be good. Life will be perfect. When my kid finally goes through that, then life will be perfect. When I finally get this promotion, my life will be perfect. We're good. Because I see what this person has, and I'm like, oh, if I have that, then life will be good. If I can afford that like that person can, then life can be good. If I can finally be in this situation, then life will be good. If I finally get through this, then life will be perfect. Coveting says, yes, I have this, but I need more, or I need that. And that's just not what God says. See, what coveting does is coveting will feed you lies and feed you lies that you need to fill a hole in your heart with material or possessions that doesn't fill it. Let me say that again. Coveting tries to replace a hole in your heart that can only be filled really by one person, by Jesus. Coveting tries to fill it with more of this, more of that. I need this, I need that. When God created you with that purpose to know and love Jesus. And instead of turning to him, you're turning to those things that you think you need, you think you want, and you're craving that, and you're craving that because you think as soon as I get that, then I'll be good. That is what I call being a slave to an unreachable desire right there. That's what coveting produces. And so for me, when I think of trying to replace that hole in your heart with something else, I think about Sunday mornings. So on Sunday mornings, we do middle school, but I also like to help out in the nursery and the kids' wing just to see their faces. It makes me so happy. I can't wait till they get into middle school and then eventually high school. It's going to be awesome. But I love stopping by the babies and the toddlers too. One, I just have a great heart for that. I love them. And two, it's great practice. My wife is expecting our first Ayo. And so, okay, we can clap. Okay. No, don't clap. Okay, we can clap. So I'm super excited for that. But something I always see is a toy as old as time. It's that box with all those shape holes in it. And there's like a circle, and you have to put it in the circle thing, and you put it in the square thing, and you put the star shape in the star shape. It makes sense. But these babies, man, they can't figure it out. They can't. And they're trying to stuff it into that hole, and you're like, and we're all looking, we're like, that is just adorable. They can't stuff it. And we're like, that is hilarious. Like, why can't they do it? But guys, I think that's how God sees us. I think that's how God sees us. Where we're seeing the babies and like, oh, why can't they put the circle one in the circle one? They're trying to stick it in the square one. It won't work. Well, just like that, we're trying to grab more money. We're trying to grab more of this person's attention, more of this person's approval. We're trying to grab this material possession, this thing, and we're trying to push it into our heart, trying to fill our heart, and it just won't fit. It just won't go in. And God's watching us like, yeah, I know. The shape that fits is Jesus, and you see that, and it's something I feel like that's how God sees us as those babies, as those toddlers. And so, guys, I have some good news for you though. Is that even though coveting produces unsatisfaction, it creates division, it creates slavery to unreachable desires. What it also does is it offers you a chance now to realize, oh my goodness, what do I need to do? Thankfully, there is an answer that we can get today of what do we do? Because I think we all struggle with this. We're not just immune to jealousy and coveting. It all happens. And so what's the answer to this? And something I love about the Bible is that it gives us to it. It gives us the answer. So Philippians 4 is where we're going to be, verses 10 through 13. Background information. Paul, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament, is writing this to the church of Philippi, the people of Philippi. Paul is writing this letter in prison. I'm imagining Paul has been beaten, has been mocked, has been spit on, has just ripped clothes, hasn't had a good meal, and he's sitting behind bars in a prison. That is where Paul is writing this. So I want you to remember that. Where is Paul writing this? How is his mood right now? Probably very hungry, probably hangry, probably just not doing good. Remember that as we read this. Let's read starting in verse 10. I rejoiced greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Sitting in prison in a very awful position in his life, terrible circumstances, unfair, Paul writes that. From us, we can think, yeah, it makes sense. He probably wants to be in a different situation. He probably wishes and is honestly coveting that he probably wishes and covets that he was with his friends right now, sleeping in his own bed tonight, eating good food, wearing good clothes. But that's not what Paul's talking about here. What Paul is actually talking about is this secret. What is this secret? Let's look again. Verse 12, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. That verse that says, I can do all things through him who gives me strength is so true. It's awesome. But man, it's used out of context. It is true that God gives you strength when you ask for it. It's good. But people write them on their shoes and do things and expecting to drain 45-foot three-pointers and do their thing. And yes, God will give you strength. But when you think of it just like that, you are completely eradicating the fact of the truth of this piece of Scripture. You were completely pulling it away from a series of scriptures before that, of the context in which Paul is writing that. And so the big idea that I want to leave you guys with today is this. Godly contentment is the secret to a fulfilled life. Godly contentment is the secret to a fulfilled life. The root problem of coveting, from Cain and Abel to us today, is thinking we need this, we need this, we need more of this, we need what that person had, we need what that person has. We need whatever is out there that we don't have so we can be fulfilled. That's the root problem. And what Jesus writes through Paul here in Philippians, what Jesus writes through Paul is that a life fulfilled is to be content in all of those circumstances. It is to be content in what God has given you already, what he has brought you through already, and the most amazing gift of all, the free love he gives you. The sacrifice on the cross, the eternal life he gives you. Another thing, very nerd moment to me, how cool this is. Old Testament, Hebrew, we saw the word covet as kamad, right? Kamad. And we talked about how kamad means to desire, to lift the eyes, right? We talked about that. Well, the New Testament was written in Greek. And so I was looking at the Greek translation of that word, the secret of being content, that little phrase. I was looking at that Greek to English translation, and it's a word called muio. Everyone say muio. Bunch of Greek cows. Good job. You guys are doing great. Muio. And what that means in English is properly shutting the eyes and the mouth to experience mystery. Blew me away. Old Testament, coveting, is to lift your eyes, look at other people, what they have. That's what coveting is. New Testament, how you battle that is the muio of closing your eyes, closing your mouth, experiencing the mystery of who Jesus is, his love for you, the mystery of the resurrection, the mystery of his love that is unfathomable, is the mystery of a creator God that decided to create you and create you with a purpose. The mystery of why do I exist? Why would God give me that when we have sinned against him? That is a mystery. That is a mystery, and the mystery is answered with his love. And so we close our eyes, we close our mouths, and we experience that mystery. Godly content, muio, closing your eyes, experiencing the mystery of Jesus. You already have the most desirable thing in the world when you have Jesus. You have life forever, you have love everlasting, and you are safe. How could you want or crave anything else when muio, close your eyes and focus on that? Instead of lifting your eyes, close them. 3 products of coveting: division, unsatisfaction, slavery to unreachable desires. I feel like I should end with giving you guys 3 products of contentment. We did 3 products of coveting, and I want to give 3 products of godly contentment. Because the antidote, the secret to defeating coveting is godly contentment. So first one is this: godly contentment produces continuous joy. Amen? Godly contentment produces continuous joy. When you are content in what God has given you, what God has offered you, you know what that makes? That makes the hard moments, the moments where you are in the waiting room waiting for the diagnosis, that moment when you get the phone call that someone passed away, that moment when you get the cancer results back, the moment when you are sitting at home wondering, what do I do with money problems right now? With that moment where life just feels so impossible, when you realize what God has done for you, it is possible to still be joyful in those moments. Now, joyful and happy are 2 different things. But joy is something that can last forever. Happy is an emotion. Godly contentment, knowing what He has done for me, knowing that no matter what happens, I am saved, I am safe, God loves me, and He gives me something worth more than anything I could ever covet or want, which is Jesus and life forever with Him. The next thing is this: godly contentment produces thankfulness. Godly contentment produces thankfulness. Knowing God has got you through all the moments, when you're content in knowing that I am safe, I am saved, it helps you realize, God, thank you for what I have right now. It helps you realize, God, thank you for the amazing husband or wife I have. God, thank you for my amazing kids. God, thank you for my job. God, thank you. I finally understand what you're saying, and I see what is in front of me. The do not worry about tomorrow and everything, I see it now, because I am content in knowing that no matter what happens, Lord, you've got me. I am thankful in that. Finally, godly contentment produces strength. Godly contentment produces strength. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Him who gives me strength. It is true. But the main point of that is when you are being content with what you have, when you are trusting God and you are saying, I have learned the secret of being content in every circumstance, you are no longer operating on your own strength. You are operating under God's own strength. And I like those odds better every time. When you are operating under a time of contentment, of knowing God has got you, you are not given strength of a human, you are giving strength from God. That in those hard moments, you can take strength. That in those good moments, you can take strength and have joy. That is what godly contentment does. Question I want to leave with you guys. I asked you to examine your hearts, examine your lives, examine your families, and I meant that. So now the question is, are you living a life full of wanting this, wanting more? A life full of division, just being unsatisfied, of being a slave to unreachable desires? Are you living that life? Or are you living a life full of joy? A life full of thankfulness, and a life full of strength? Are you content? If you want to talk more about that, we'd love to. In a second, we'll have a QR code on the screen if you're wanting to respond. I want to challenge all of you guys, if you feel any push or anything in your heart or in your family, talk about that. If you feel like, hey, I'm struggling with this, let's pray for you. Let's talk about that. If you're saying, hey, I want this Jesus thing that you're talking about, this desire, this thing that is better than anything else, the love of Jesus, life with Jesus forever, I want that. Let's talk about it. Let's respond. Church family, I love you. Will you pray with me?